So what does an objective actually look like? It's pretty simple. We start with a verb and a need, and then combine them to make a statement. So ask yourself, what do you need? And then what action will you take to meet that need? So for example, you might say, well, I need to get book sales. And to get book sales, I need people to know about my books. So an objective based off of that need and that action might look like this. I will show 100 new people my books every month. The need is for people to become aware of your work, and the action is to show them your work. I am going to show them my work because I need them to know about it, right? Here's another one. Perhaps you need to generate more interest in your work. You're showing it to people, but, nobody's, biting. So you say, I will develop entertaining and interesting content related to my books on social media. The need is to get people interested. The action is to develop actual content. Here's another one. I will create a rough draft of my target audience persona. The need is to know exactly who you're selling your book to. You might be showing your book to 100 different people, but you're showing it to the wrong people, right? So the need is to know who you're showing your book to, and the action is to figure out your target audience. I'm going to give you a few more objectives, and I've based most of these objectives off of the idea of making money as your end game, because I think most people have some sort of numerical end game that they want to achieve, and many of the objectives that apply to the numerical end games, like I want to make a certain amount of money, I want to make a certain number of sales, those tend to also apply to other types of end games, like ideological ones, as opposed to many ideological objectives might not necessarily directly apply to making money. So, for example, you might have a few objectives that look like this. I will publish my books in more formats and languages. I will develop a paid ads strategy. I will create a sales funnel. I will develop a customer retention strategy. I will find 100 true fans. I will create a YouTube channel. And just to give you an example of how an ideological objective might look different, I have an objective which is I will convert all of my books into audio format. And the reason this is not necessarily applicable in the grand scheme of things, or at least at this point in my career to my financial goals, is because creating audiobooks is really expensive. It's going to cost me a lot of money, and there's no guarantee that I'm going to make that money back. However, it's important for me to do it because diversity is important to me and equity is important to me. And so one of my intentions is to make my work as accessible to as many different types of people as possible. And that includes people who can't read for various reasons, but they can listen, who don't have time to actually physically read with their eyes, who learn better by listening. And so for me, it's important for me to make my work available in audio formats, even if it costs me money, and even if it's expensive, and even if it's going to take money away from marketing and paid advertising, which is what I'm doing to try to achieve my financial endgame. Does that make sense? I made a list of objectives that I have attached in a resource on this module. And I encourage you to go through and see if you can take the objective and work it backwards and figure out what the need is and what the action is. It's not that hard. There's an answer key as well. So you don't have to guess if you don't want to. You could just look at the answer key. I will say, though, I do think that many objectives apply to a variety of needs and actions. So I gave one answer per objective, and you might come up with a different answer, and it could be perfectly right or reasonable. So don't get too hung up on it's wrong or whatever. It's just a kind of a fun activity. And also, I personally really struggled early on to wrap my head around objectives and how they worked and the best ways to create really good objectives. And so hopefully this will help you dive in feet first and really get your brain around what an objective is. The last thing that I want to mention here is that objectives don't have to be formatted in any particular special way. They don't have to be SMART goals if you know what those are, but they can be if you find that helpful and if it's something that you know how to do. They don't have to have timelines necessarily. They don't even have to be measurable. You can have pretty vague objectives as long as those objectives are helping you move in the direction that you want to go based off of your end game and based off of what you were trying to achieve. It can certainly be helpful sometimes to make them measurable just so that you can, track if you're actually making progress. It might be helpful to put timelines on them to give yourself deadlines. But again, not everybody needs the same things and not everybody has the same working habits. And so do what works for you. And I will probably repeat this 100 times throughout this course. But remember, these are not set in stone. You could write 10 objectives today and you could go and completely reject them all tomorrow. You could write 50 objectives today and then only end up following through on 2. They are not set in stone. You can change them at any point as you and your business grow. You can adjust and be flexible. The whole idea behind the system is that it can be as flexible or as rigid as you need it to be. So just you figure out how to make it work for you.